everybody, and welcome back to Out of Bodies 31 Days of Halloween. Today's video, you guys, is pretty unbelievable. And I got my hair pulled back because this is going to be a long video, so get comfortable, get your coffee, your drink of choice, whatever, your snack. It's going to be long, and it is a intense kind of story in the sense that, you know, I don't normally talk about serial killers on here. So to me, it's like intense. It's one thing for me to talk about like the paranormal and stuff, but to talk about someone that just kills people, you know, is like more dark and intense. So it's like, I pulled my hair back because this is gonna be a long video. Y'all get comfortable too. And let's get right into this. Today's video is about Dorothea Puente. In the photos of her, she looks to be a very innocent, older woman. Nothing crazy going on, nothing to see here. Well, I'll have you know, this woman is actually responsible for the deaths of at least 9 people. And it is not a pretty story. So I'm gonna kind of generalize in a nutshell what she's known for, and then I'm gonna go deeper into it, her life, her childhood, everything that happened in a minute. But in general, she is known for killing multiple people in this kind of boarding house, safe home for elderly people who were also mentally ill or had a past with history with drugs and alcohol. She owned this boarding house and she would take care of them there. At some point, some of them start to go missing. Apparently, she was responsible for that. And after they were missing or after they were killed, she would continue to cash their, you know, social security checks or whatever checks they were getting in the mail. She would cash them and just take all the money herself. So to get into this, I'm going to start from the beginning, start from when she was young and just go all the way through this. So Dorothea Puente was actually born with a different last name. The Puente is from a husband later on. But Dorothea was born January 9th, 1929, and she had a very rough childhood. She was born to alcoholic parents. Supposedly they were abusive as well. She often had to scavenge for food, and both parents actually died before she reached age 10. So that just kind of adds to the craziness and just the rough childhood that she had. Now, fast forward later on in her life, she actually lied about her childhood and said that she was actually born in Mexico. I'm guessing that she's made up the story after she ended up with the last name Puente and probably just went with, oh, I'm from Mexico and all of this, and said that she had like 17 siblings and all that. That was all a lie. So Dorothea, when she got older, she did get married. She got married multiple times, but her first marriage didn't last very long. Her husband died after 2 years, and after he died, because she was tight on money, she started forging checks. And for that crime, she served 6 months in jail. And then after this, she ends up having a child with someone else and gives that child up for adoption. Now, there's different stories on this. I think some people say she had more than one child set to adoption. There were so many resources on this topic, honestly. I just kind of tried to summarize as best I could. Believe it or not, what I'm giving you guys in this video is the like condensed version. So then her second marriage, I believe it was her second marriage, but one of the later marriages, she ends up married for 14 years, but it's to someone who's very, very abusive. In 1960, she was actually arrested in a brothel and she spent 90 days in jail. So shortly after she was released from that, she gets caught again, not in a brothel, but she gets caught with vagrancy and she gets sentenced to another 90 days. So if you're seeing a pattern here, this woman, the horrible crimes she committed that we know of were committed much later in life, but all throughout her life, what I found, you know, not necessarily good, but just interesting about her story is that she has a history of crime. Like the well-known murders that she committed later on is what she's known for, but she had a whole history before that, so who knows? And her record goes on and on after, 1960. Over time, the crimes kind of got more and more serious. And eventually she did get a job working as a nurse's aide, caring for people who were disabled, and she would go to their homes and just take care of them. And then eventually she ended up taking over the boarding house on 2100 F Street, which is in Sacramento, California. Around there, it's like the infamous, I would say, street. She took over this boarding house back in 1968. In 1976, she started appearing in bars and kind of hanging around, trying to meet older men who were receiving pensions or some sort of like government benefits. You can kind of fill out the rest, like she was trying to woo them so that she could do whatever she would do to then be able to just cash their checks. So at this point in time, what she would actually do is find older men who were receiving pensions or some sort of benefits, and she would get close enough to them to where she could actually forge their signatures and forge checks, and just use their money, basically. Eventually she was caught from this and she was put on probation, although she continued to do it while she was on probation. Now in April 1982, this is kind of when things start to happen as far as we know. She moves into an upstairs apartment and she has a roommate. Her roommate is named Ruth Monroe. Now soon after moving in together, Ruth unfortunately passed away, supposedly due to an overdose of Tylenol and codeine. Now after her roommate died, the police did question Dorthea about the death, and she told police that her roommate was very depressed because of her husband having a terminal illness. Now, later on in some videos that I've seen, documentaries on this, family members of Ruth confirmed that she was not depressed, that just did not match up with her at all. That yes, her husband was terminally ill, but she was still in good spirits. She was still hopeful. She wasn't severely depressed from what they say, but this is what Dorthea told the police, and they bought it and they deemed the death a suicide. Now, weeks later, police get a phone call from 74-year-old Malcolm McKenzie claiming that Dorthea had drugged him and robbed him. She was then charged with theft and then sentenced to 5 years in jail. Does she quit? No. While in jail, let me say that again, while in jail, not after she got out, while she's in jail, she starts corresponding with a gentleman, a 77-year-old retiree named Everson Gilmeth. So upon being released from jail in 1985, Dorthea was greeted by her boyfriend, I guess you'd say, the gentleman she'd been corresponding with, Mr. Gilmeth. He had picked her up in a red Ford pickup. You'll want to remember that pickup. It's important later. So after she got out of jail, they started making wedding plans. They were planning on getting married. So towards the end of that year, Dorthea actually hired someone to install wood paneling in her apartment. That man's name was Ismael Flores. Upon finishing the job for her, she gives him an $800 bonus. Like, that's not what she paid him. And, that's not what she owed him. She gave him that much as a bonus. And she gives him a red Ford pickup that she claims belongs to a boyfriend in LA who doesn't need it anymore. You remember that red Ford pickup? So after giving him all those things, she then asks him for one more favor. So what she asks him to do is to build her a wooden box, 6 feet by 3 feet by 2 feet. Now, what do you think that box was for? She tells him the box was for books and other items. She then told him after building it and after she put the stuff in it to nail it shut and to transport it to a storage facility that she would accompany him in doing. However, on the way there, she tells him to stop at a point where they get to this riverbank, and she tells him to go dump the box in the river. He actually does question her. He's like, why are we doing this? And she says, oh, well, it's just a bunch of junk, this is an unofficial, what she says is this is an unofficial dumping site, like household items dumping site in a river. And he buys it, so he takes the box and he dumps it in the river. On January 1st, 1986, police receive a phone call from a fisherman saying he's found a mysterious box in the river. Police show up, open the box, and yes, it's a badly decomposed body of an elderly man. It is the body of Everson Gilmith. Now, what is crazy about this particular murder is that after she did this, not only was she continuing to like cash his checks and everything and take his money and not report his death, obviously, she continued to write letters to his family explaining why he hadn't contacted them and saying that he was ill. So fast forward to when she has the boarding house and the whole situation with that. While the tenants were still living, she would actually cash their checks and just give them a portion of it and say that she took out expenses is what she would do. She would say, okay, here's what's left after I've taken out expenses for your like room and board and stuff. Of course, what she would give them was very, very little, and she would take most of their money and just... Honestly, that's what I'm curious about. What did she even use the money for? Like, I still don't know. I didn't really research into that, and there wasn't really anything out there stating what she used the money for. So what little money she would give them, inevitably, some of them, especially those elderly that had suffered with alcoholism, would inevitably end up spending their money at the local bars, but would later be picked up by police because of an anonymous tip. And after they were picked up, she would just continue to cash their checks. Because mind you, these people in this home, most of them were either had been homeless or they didn't have any family. And so, sad to say, most of them would not really be missed by anyone if they went missing, or if they were picked up by police. Like, nobody would really know to contact her or anything. They wouldn't really trace them back to her because they're kind of an unknown in a sense. It's sad, but it's true, and this is how she would take advantage. Now, at some point when she was at this boarding house, she hired a handyman whom she called Chief, and supposedly by neighbors he was seen digging in the yard. He was seen like digging in the basement or something, and I don't know. There's not a lot of clear information on that, but apparently neighbors did see some suspicious activity that he was doing on the property. So up till now, Dorothea Puente was pretty much getting off scot-free on all these crimes, and not to mention these murders that were going on. Like, she was going undetected because she's this little old lady who owns a boarding house for basically homeless people and for elderly people who need help. So, I mean, she's literally the person you would least expect. I mean, on the outside, it looks like she's running like a really nice business helping people, and that she's just doing it out of the kindness of her heart. However, her luck did eventually change in November of 1988. One of the tenants in the home had a social worker that he would see and go to, and she would kind of like help him and check on him and stuff. This tenant was named Bert Montoya. So apparently at one point, after not hearing from him for a long time, his social worker actually, I believe she called the home and talked to Dorthea and actually asked, where he's been or if he's okay or whatever. And then Dorthea then says that I believe she tells her that he's traveling or something to see family. Well, she buys that at first, but then after weeks and weeks, and he's still not back, she gets suspicious, so she actually calls the police. And she reports him missing to the police, and so they get a warrant to actually search the house. Now, upon searching the house and looking in the backyard, they find recently disturbed soil, so they ask Dorthea if they can dig. And of course, she acts completely cool about it and says, yeah, sure. She even offers them a shovel. Now, after they're digging for a while, they come across this tree root, like a thick tree root, and one of the police officers is trying really hard to pull it out, and he's having a lot of trouble. He finally pulls it out, and it turns out it's not a tree root. It's a human leg bone. And immediately after that, they find a shoe with a foot still in it. Now, of course, after finding this, they run and get Dorthea, and tell her and ask her about it. And she acts all surprised, and she's nervous acting, and she's just, like, oh my gosh, what is going on kind of thing. So that first body ended up being that of a female. It was not Bert, but they discover more bodies. So what happened next? Before they unearthed the second body, she actually walked up to one of the detectives. She asked him if she was being arrested, and he said, well, no, not at this time. We don't really know what's going on yet, and no, you're not under arrest, not right now. And so she said she's just really uneasy about this. She's just really anxious, and she just wants to have a coffee with someone down the street, and asked if he could escort her. She's like, I'll come right back. I just need to get away for a minute. So he proceeds to escort her to the coffee shop. Now he has to escort her because at this point the media is surrounding this, and there are people lining the streets outside of her house. So she cannot just leave. Like, she has to have a police escort. He escorts her, comes back, and finds out that they have unearthed yet another body. And when she walked up to him to ask him if she could leave, they were only within like a couple feet of pulling that body up, of finding it basically. And she knew that. So that's why she took that time to say, like, I'm gonna get out of here. I don't want to be here when they find this other body. So by the time they unearthed that second body and they went back to look for her, she was gone. She had fled. Now, a total of 7 bodies were found in that yard. Yes, 7. And as you can see in the photos, that yard is not very big. Like, yeah, it's like in the middle of the city. 7 bodies, 6 in the backyard, 1 in the front yard. The one in the front yard is said to be her first victim. And how they know that is, it seemed like they could tell by each body the way it was buried, not just from the decomposition, but just the way that she buried them as far as when she did it, because the first few bodies that she buried were like wrapped really good, or done a certain way, more meticulous, and then the other ones were just like put in there the way they were. The very first one, however, was peculiar because the body was found without hands, without feet, and without a head. That is just so horrific. I don't even know. The reasoning why she did this, allegedly, is because so that this person couldn't be identified. Because, if you don't have hands, you don't have fingerprints. If you don't have the head, you don't really have like dental work and all of that they can kind of trace and figure out who it is. So while she was missing and they were looking for her, some of the police went to the neighbors to question them and see if they had noticed anything suspicious. And one neighbor in particular said that he had noticed a really foul smell at one point. And he actually did question Dorothea about it, asking her what that was. And she explained to him that it was a fertilizer, a new fertilizer that she got. That was just, it's fertilizer, it smells bad. Now that same neighbor found in his garden, the day that the police searched the house and did all this digging, he found human teeth in his garden. Like someone had just thrown them in there. Yeah. Like she had just had these human teeth and just discarded them in his garden. Now, as she was fleeing, no, she didn't do the smart thing, which would be to like change her identity and stay under the radar and hide and all of this so she doesn't get caught. She proceeds to just go to bars and try to pick up older men for their pensions just like before. So one man actually recognizes her from the news and calls the police. So it was brought forward during the trials that all of these bodies that were found had traces of Delmain, which is used for insomnia. They had discovered that she had drugged, suffocated, and then paid local parolees from a halfway house, paid them cash to take the bodies and bury them in the backyard. When police were searching the house, After finding the bodies, they found this particular guest room that had a very, very foul odor. And supposedly this was the room where she would keep the bodies for days. Like, not like for a night until she could have them buried. Like, they would stay there for days. And you can imagine, there was carpet in there. Anything that was oozing was getting in the carpet and smelling. I don't have to spell it out for you guys. Like, it was disgusting. Now, at the end of the trial, she ended up being charged with 9 murders. So that's the 7 plus Everson Gilmith, the man that she had corresponded with and was planning to marry after she got out of jail, and her old roommate, Ruth. So she was also charged with her death. Even though she was charged with 9 murders, she was only convicted of 3. I believe that the jury claimed that there just wasn't enough evidence. It was mostly circumstantial, but she was convicted of 3 and sentenced to 2 life sentences. Now, apparently she claimed herself as innocent until the day she died. At one point I saw online somebody had interviewed her while she was in jail, and just asked her all these questions, and I didn't want to put it all in this video, but in a nutshell, she claimed that she was innocent and that the people died of natural causes, and she died in March 2011 in jail due to natural causes. So that is the end of this video. That is the story in a nutshell. There are a lot more details, like even as I was going in this video, that I would remember reading or watching in another video, but I don't want this video to be too long. If you guys want to know more about this story, I'll link some videos down below that you guys can do further research on. But I just thought this it's not even a story, it's real, you know, like this true crime thing. I don't usually do true crime on this channel, but I thought it'd be something different to do, and I just found this particular story so fantastic, not in a good way, but in a bad way. Like how in the hell did she get away with this, and why? Yeah, this is the end of this video. I'm thinking of maybe turning this into a series. I'm not sure though. I'm thinking of calling it Unlikely Killers. So like doing a series and profiling not just serial killers, but like someone like her that's an older woman or a child. You know, there's children that have committed murders, you know, things like that. So if that's something that would be interesting to you guys, let me know. I know there's other people doing a really good job with true crime on their channel, so I don't want to step on any toes, and it's not really my forte anyway, but I thought this would kind of be a different take on it. So if you guys want to see something like that, let me know. Otherwise, this might be a one-hit wonder kind of video, but I just thought it would be interesting. I appreciate you guys watching. If you watched till the end, congratulations. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you have a wonderful night, and I will see you tomorrow in the next video of 31 Days of Halloween. Bye.